you're using at least 3 of them today, right now, in your kitchen, your bathroom, your hands, and in 5 years, most of them will be gone. Not because they stopped working, because the opposite, they work too well. 11 everyday products made the Amish way that are quietly disappearing while the cheap replacements pile up in your cabinets. And the worst part, you already paid for the imitation. You're using it right now. Here's what changed everything for me. The first time I stayed with a family outside Millersburg, Ohio, I watched a grandmother hand her granddaughter a bar of soap that her own mother had made. 3 generations. 1 recipe. No barcode. And it cleaned better than anything I had under my sink. By the end of this, I'll show you the one Amish-made item documented in an Ohio State Extension bulletin from 1943 that you can recreate in your own kitchen this weekend. No special skills, no new house. If you own a home, especially one built before 1980, this is for you too. Stay with me, because the 11th one is the one they most want you to forget. Let me start with the one sitting in your bathroom right now. Soap. Real soap. Walk down any store aisle and grab a bar, turn it over, read the back. You won't find the word soap on most of them. You'll find the word beauty bar or cleansing bar. That's not an accident. That's a legal dodge, because what you're holding isn't soap at all. It's a detergent block with synthetic foaming agents, and it strips the natural oils right off your skin. The Amish never stopped making the real thing. Lye soap, rendered fat, wood, ash, lye, and thyme. That's it. 3 ingredients your great-grandmother knew by heart. Here's what nobody tells you. Real soap produces glycerin as it cures. Glycerin is the thing that keeps your skin from cracking in the winter. And the big manufacturers, they pull the glycerin out. They sell it separately in your lotion, the lotion you only need because they took the glycerin out of your soap in the first place. Read that again. They sold you the problem and the cure in the same trip to the store. I watched a woman named Sarah in Lancaster County make a year's worth of soap in a single afternoon. The cost? Pennies a bar. The store version of a comparable natural bar runs you $6, $7, $8 now. Do that math over a lifetime, and you've handed over thousands of dollars for something you could have made for the price of a cup of coffee. But here's why it won't exist. In 5 years, the small Amish soap makers are aging out. The young ones are being pushed towards selling online, where the rules and the fees and the middlemen eat them alive. The knowledge is local. It's spoken, not written. And when that grandmother in Millersburg passes, that exact recipe goes with her unless somebody writes it down. Therefore, the second one matters even more, because it's the thing that made the soap possible in the first place. Rendered fat, tallow and lard. I know, the moment I say animal fat, half of you flinch. That flinch was installed in you. On purpose. Starting in the early 1900s, when seed oil companies needed a market, they spent enormous money convincing Americans that the fat their grandparents cooked with for 10,000 years was suddenly killing them. The Amish never believed it. They render their own tallow and lard the way it's been done since before this country had a name. And it's not just for soap. It's for cooking, for seasoning cast iron, for waterproofing leather, for salves that heal cracked hands faster than anything in a tube. A jar of rendered tallow sits stable on a shelf for a year without refrigeration. Think about that. No power, no freezer, no dependence on a grid that can fail in an ice storm. A pioneer family in 1860 could keep their cooking fat through an entire winter with no electricity at all. Can you say that about the bottle of oil in your pantry right now? Here's the part that should make you angry. The seed oils that replace tallow are extracted with chemical solvents and high heat. They go rancid, they oxidize, and the research linking them to inflammation has been quietly stacking up in university labs for years, while the marketing tells you they're heart healthy. The Amish skipped that whole experiment. They just kept rendering. But this knowledge is vanishing fastest of all, because rendering takes time and patience, and the modern world has trained an entire generation to believe their time is too valuable for anything that takes longer than a microwave. So they buy the bottle, and the skill dies a little more each year. Now, the third product is one you'd never expect to be in danger. You probably have a cheap version hanging in your laundry room, the wooden clothespin. Sounds trivial? It isn't. The American clothespin used to be a marvel of simple engineering. Solid hardwood, usually maple or beech, with a spring that lasted 40 years. The Amish and the old Shaker communities made them by hand, and a single one could outlive the person who bought it. Go buy a pack today. They're made of soft imported wood that splinters in a season, with springs that rust in the rain and snap by August. You'll replace them 3-4 times a year. That's by design. A clothespin that lasts 40 years is a clothespin you only buy once. And a company can't survive on customers who only buy once. Here's the thing. They never want you to connect. The clothespin is useless without the thing it's attached to. A clothesline. And the clothesline is the single most effective money-saving device ever hung in an American backyard. I'll come back to that. Because it ties directly into something every homeowner watching this can do this week, no matter how old your house is. But first, let me agitate the wound a little, because you need to feel what's been taken. The fourth product is in your kitchen drawer right now, and it's a fraud. The kitchen knife. The Amish and the old German smiths who settled Pennsylvania in the 1700s made carbon steel knives that took an edge sharper than any stainless blade you own and held it through years of daily use. You could sharpen one on a creek stone. It became part of the family, handed down like the soap. Then stainless steel came along, easier to mass produce, doesn't stain, sounds better, right? Here's what they didn't tell you. Stainless steel is harder to sharpen and loses its edge faster under real use. So you bought a knife that looks permanent and performs poorly, and when it dulls, you don't sharpen it, you throw it out and buy another. A carbon steel blade forged by hand will outlive your grandchildren if you treat it right. Wipe it dry, don't leave it wet. That's the whole secret. That tiny bit of care is exactly what the modern marketer counts on you being too busy to do. The old smiths are nearly gone. The knowledge of differential heat treatment, the exact color the steel turns before the quench, the sound it makes, that's not in a manual. It's in a pair of 80-year-old hands in a forge outside Charm, Ohio. And when those hands stop, that knife stops being made. Therefore, the fifth product follows naturally because it's what keeps that knife alive. The whetstone, the hand sharpening stone. We've become a society that throws away anything that gets dull. Knives, scissors, axes, garden shears. The Amish sharpen everything. A good natural stone, the kind quarried and shaped the old way, can sharpen 10,000 edges over a lifetime and never wear out in any way that matters. The electric sharpeners sold today grind away your blade with every pass. They're fast, sure, but they eat your knife alive, removing far more metal than a handstone ever would, so your convenient gadget shortens the life of the very tool it claims to maintain. More replacements, more money, more dependence. You see the pattern forming now, don't you? Every single one of these products was built to last. Every replacement was built to fail. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's a business model. It even has a name coined by a Manhattan real estate broker named Bernard London in a 1932 pamphlet. He called it planned obsolescence, and he actually proposed making it the law that products should be legally required to die on schedule so people would be forced to keep buying. That pamphlet is real. You can find it. 1932, a man wrote down the plan to make your stuff break on purpose, and the modern economy quietly adopted it without ever asking your permission. The Amish never signed up for that, and that's exactly why their products are being squeezed out. They're inconvenient to an economy that needs you to keep buying, and that pattern built to last replaced by something built to fail is exactly what I spent years documenting before I ever made a single video about it. I put everything I found, the recipes, the methods, the step-by-step instructions straight from those Amish households into a field guide called the Amish Pantry Blueprint. It's part of a complete set that includes the Amish Stockpile Blueprint and the full Combined Resilience Field Edition, all available right now for $97 at the link in the description. If you want the written record of knowledge that's being spoken less and less every year, this is where it lives. Now, back to the products themselves, because the pattern doesn't stop at the clothespin. Now, if you already own a house and you're thinking this only applies to people building a farm from scratch, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. The sixth product is one you've been paying a stranger to replace your whole life. The clothesline and the wooden drying rack. Here's the number that should stop you cold. Your clothes dryer is one of the most expensive appliances in your home to run. Penn State Research and Utility data put a typical electric dryer at around 300 kilowatt hours a year, and for a lot of families running it daily, the cost climbs well past $100 a year every year. just to do what the sun and a little air do for free. Run that over 30 years. That's thousands of dollars blown out a vent in your wall to dry clothes that the Amish dry with a rope and a rack. And it's not just the money. The heat of a dryer breaks down the fibers in your clothing. That lint you clean out of the trap, that's your clothes disintegrating. The dryer is literally destroying your shirts, so you'll buy more shirts. The clothesline doesn't do that. Air-dried clothes last years longer. Here's your existing home action, and you can do it this weekend. No permits, no contractor, no remodel. Get a folding wooden drying rack, the kind the Amish still build by hand, and set it by a sunny window or a heat source inside your home. Indoors, in winter, it does two jobs at once. It dries your clothes, and it releases moisture into your dry winter air, which means your skin stops cracking and your throat stops feeling like sandpaper. You're replacing both a dryer and a humidifier with one wooden rack. I did this in my own home 3 winters ago. My electric bill in January dropped by a number. I had to double check because I didn't believe it the first time. And my house stopped feeling like the inside of a cracker box. That's a before 1980 house, by the way. Old, drafty, the kind of place the experts say you need to gut and rebuild. You don't. You need a rope and a rack and the willingness to ignore what the appliance store told you. But the 7th product is where this stops being about money and starts being about something you can't put a price on. Light. Specifically, the oil lamp. When the power goes out in an Amish home, nothing happens. Nothing changes. The lamps were already lit. There is no scramble for flashlights, no dead phone, no spoiled food, no panic. They are simply never dependent on a switch that somebody else controls. The kerosene and oil lamps they use are the same fundamental design refined in the 1850s, and a good one throws a warm, steady light you can read by for pennies an hour. A gallon of lamp oil can give you hundreds of hours of light. Compare that to the helplessness most families feel after 2 hours without power. But here's the deeper thing I learned sitting at an Amish table after dark. The quality of that light changes how a family behaves. There's no glowing screen pulling everyone into a separate corner. The light gathers people. They sit closer to it. They talk. The lamp doesn't just replace your electric bulb. It replaces the thing that pulled your family apart. And the makers of these lamps, the people who still produce the proper wicks and the hand-blown chimneys, are a shrinking handful. When the chimney glass factories close, and they are closing, the replacement parts vanish. A lamp without a chimney is just a fire hazard, so the whole system quietly dies, not with a bang, but with a slow starving out of the parts. Therefore, the 8th product is the one that keeps the heat in. The hand-stitched wool blanket and the downtick. The Amish sleep warm in unheated upstairs bedrooms through Ohio and Pennsylvania winters that drop well below zero. How? Wool. Real, raw, hand-processed wool, and feather ticks stuffed the old way. Wool does something synthetic bedding cannot. It stays warm even when it's damp, and it breathes so you don't wake up clammy. A properly made wool blanket lasts 50 years. The polyester comforter you bought lasts maybe 5 before it flattens into a sad, staticky sheet, and it's made from petroleum, so it actually melts toward your skin if it ever gets near a flame. A family that sleeps under wool can keep the bedroom heat turned way down or off entirely all winter. That's hundreds of dollars a year in heating gone. And the wool doesn't need a power source, a filter, or a subscription, but the hand processing of wool, the carding, the cleaning, the stitching, is labor that the modern market refuses to pay fairly for. So the skill concentrates in fewer and fewer hands every year. The machines make a fluffy imitation that looks the same on a shelf and fails you the first cold night. Now I want to slow down because the 9th product is the one that nearly brought me to tears the first time I understood it. Home canned food and the knowledge of how to do it. In the Amish cellars I visited, I saw shelves, long shelves in cool stone rooms lined with hundreds of glass jars. Tomatoes, green beans, peaches, beef, a full year of food grown in their own soil, sealed in glass, sitting at room temperature without a single watt of electricity. The USDA published canning guidelines as far back as 1917 during the First World War, when the government actually begged Americans to can their own food so the nation could survive. They called the home gardens victory gardens. There was a time this knowledge was considered patriotic, a matter of national survival. Now, Most Americans can't safely can a single jar, and they've been quietly taught to be afraid of it. The food sits in a freezer instead, completely dependent on the grid. One long power outage and everything they stored rots. The Amish family loses nothing. Their food doesn't need electricity. It never did. The cost difference is staggering. A family that cans the harvest from a modest garden can put up a year of vegetables for the cost of the jars and lids, and good canning jars last decades. Compare that to a grocery bill that climbs every single month while the quality drops. Here's the part that haunts me. This knowledge used to live in every American household. Your great-grandmother had it. It wasn't special, it was just life. And in 2 generations, it was nearly erased, replaced by dependence on stores and freezers and supply chains that we all watched wobble and nearly break not so long ago. The Amish kept it. They are, in many ways, the last large group in America that still holds the complete chain of this knowledge, from seed to soil to jar to table. And as the older generation passes, even within their communities, the youngest are being pulled toward easier paths. But the 10th product is the one that ties everything together. The one I think is the single most important object in an Amish home. The treadle sewing machine, no electricity. You power it with your foot, a smooth rocking motion, and it sews as well as any machine you can buy today. Better, in fact, on heavy fabric like canvas and denim and leather, where modern electric machines burn out their motors. The Singer treadle machines built between roughly 1880 and the 1940s are still running in Amish homes today. Let that land. A machine built before your grandparents were born, still doing daily work, with no motor to fail, no circuit board to fry, no power cord at all. Some of these machines are over 100 years old and have never once needed a repairman. Why does it matter? Because the ability to mend is the ability to escape the cycle entirely. When you can repair a torn coat, rehem worn pants, patch a quilt, and sew new clothes from cloth, you step almost completely out of the system that needs you to keep buying. A treadle machine is a quiet declaration of independence sitting in the corner of a room, and it's being lost twice over. The machines themselves are being scrapped for parts and the skill to use them, to maintain them, to replace a belt and oil. The works lives in fewer hands every year. The companies that make modern machines have no interest in selling you something that runs for a century. There's no profit in a machine your great-grandchildren will still be using. You feel it now, don't you? Every one of these 11 things shares one trait. They free you, and every replacement, the detergent bar, the seed oil, the splintering clothespin, the dull stainless knife, the power-hungry dryer, the dead when the grid dies freezer, the electric machine that burns out, every one of them ties you tighter to a system that profits from your dependence. Which brings me to the 11th, the one I promised you at the start, the one I found buried in an Ohio State Extension bulletin from 1943, and the one I believe they most want you to forget. It's not a fancy tool. It's not expensive. It's something almost every home had 100 years ago, and almost none have now, a working root cellar. Or rather, the knowledge of cold storage without electricity. Here's what stunned me. That 1943 bulletin, printed during the Second World War when steel and power were rationed, laid out in plain language how an ordinary family could store an entire winter's worth of vegetables using nothing but the natural temperature of the earth. Below about 4 feet down, the ground holds a steady temperature, roughly 50 to 55 degrees, all year round in most of the country. Cool in summer, warm enough to never freeze in winter. The earth is a refrigerator that has been running for free since the beginning of time. The Amish never abandoned this. They store potatoes, carrots, apples, cabbages, and squash for months, crisp and fresh, with zero electricity, zero refrigerant, zero monthly cost. The food stays good through the whole winter. And here's the secret finale, the part that's simple enough to do this weekend. Even if you live in a regular house with a regular yard, you do not need to excavate a room under your house. The old bulletin describes a method the homesteaders called a buried cooler, and the Amish still use a version of it. You take a clean barrel or a heavy trash can, you bury it in the ground in a shaded spot up to its rim, you fill it with your vegetables packed in straw or sawdust, and you cap it with a lid and a thick layer of straw and a board on top. That's it. The earth holds the temperature, the straw insulates against the surface frost, And you have just built a refrigerator that costs nothing to run, never breaks, doesn't care if the power's out for a month, and will keep your food fresh through the deepest part of winter. The straw matters. That's the detail the bulletin emphasized that most people miss. Straw, not hay. Straw doesn't pack down and rot the way hay does, and it traps pockets of air that hold the steady earth temperature against the cold trying to creep down from the surface. One layer of the wrong material and it fails. One layer of the right material and it works for generations. This is the knowledge that built this country before the power company existed. It survived the Great Depression. It survived 2 world wars. And it nearly died in a single generation of convenience, kept alive in the end by a handful of plain families in Ohio and Pennsylvania who simply refused to let go of what worked. Now you have it too. Think about what just happened here. 11 things. Soap, fat, clothespins, a knife, a sharpening stone, a clothesline, a lamp, a wool blanket, a jar of canned food, a treadle machine, and the earth itself as your refrigerator. Every one of them was ordinary once. Every one of them set a family free, and every one of them is being quietly squeezed out of existence, not because it failed, but because it worked too well to be profitable. You didn't lose this knowledge by accident. It was taken one convenient replacement at a time until you forgot you ever had it. And today, you took a piece of it back. If you're the kind of person who believes real knowledge has been pushed aside to protect someone else's profit, then you already understand why these 11 things matter more than anything on a store shelf. You feel it. That quiet anger, and underneath it, something better. Hope. Because not one of these things is out of your reach. You can start this weekend. So tell me this. Of all 11, which one surprised you the most? Was it the glycerin they pull out of your soap and sell back to you in lotion? Or was it the buried barrel that turns your own backyard into a refrigerator? Leave a comment right now and tell me which one you're going to try first. I read them, and I answer them, and I want to know. And if you want to keep recovering what was taken from us, subscribe and stand with the people who refuse to forget. Because the next one I'm working on is the single change the Amish make to an ordinary wood stove that doubles the heat from the same amount of wood, and I found it in a document older than the light bulb. You won't want to miss what's inside that one. Don't go buy the imitation again. You already know better now.